Hi everybody, this is Francisco Gil-White for בערוץ and Management of Reality in this joint program series. And today we have with us Mordechai Kedar. Mordechai Kedar is very famous here in Israel and also outside of Israel as a great expert on Arab culture in different countries and also a great expert on Islam. People always ask me, what is Israel supposed to do, right? So Israel will win the war, hopefully, but then what is Israel supposed to do?
Well, for this we have to understand the core problems, not only with the Palestinians, but also with the whole Middle East. The states of the Middle East are divided roughly to two kinds of states. One is the failing states, and the other one is the successful states. The failing states are Lebanon, Syria, Iraq, Sudan, Yemen, Libya, more or less. The successful ones are Kuwait, Qatar, Oman, the Sultanate of Oman, Saudi Arabia, and the 7 Emirates which are united to the United Arab Emirates. Abu Dhabi, Dubai, Ras Al Khaimah, Fujairah, and so forth. These are the successful states. So the question is, why are these failures and why are these successes? Okay. What is the element which makes this a failure and this success? People tend to think that the oil, because in the Gulf there is oil, but it's not correct, because Dubai, for example, has no oil and no gas. Maybe 1 or 2% of the GDP is based on oil and gas, and Dubai is a heaven on earth. Iraq and Libya are full of oil, and they are hell on earth, in spite of the oil. So evidently it's not the oil. So what is the element which makes this into success? And this, the answer is the culture. Culture. What do I mean? All the failing states are conglomerates of ethnic groups. Let's say in Syria you have Arabs, you have Turkmens, you have Armenians, and you have 4 religions in Syria: Muslims, Christians, Druze and Alawites. You have sects like Shia, Sunnah, and all kinds of denominations that are divided inside. Iraq has 10 religions, 76 tribes or clans, the population. 4 ethnic groups: Kurds, Arabs, by the way, Kurds in Syria as well, and Persians and Turkmens, and sects, who knows how many. And the failure of the modern state, Iraq, Syria, is that the state tried to replace the traditional loyalties of the people to the ethnic group or to the tribal group or the religious or the sectarian group, and to become all galvanized under the Iraqi idea, modern idea. Adopt the flag and the national anthem, and everybody will be Iraqi and sing kumbaya around the fire. And this has failed. This failed in Syria, in Lebanon, it failed in Iraq, it failed in Sudan, as you see today, a civil war, in Yemen, in Libya. While the successful states, each and every one is one group, one clan. Kuwait belongs to a clan named Al is family, Al Sabah. Qatar belongs to Al Thani. Dubai belongs to Al Maktoum. Abu Dhabi belongs to Al Nahyan. Saudi Arabia belongs to Al Saud. This is the solution. If you have one group as the state, the owners of the state, the rulers of the state, the group rules itself. It's like a nation state, small nation state, legitimate in the eyes of the citizens, functioning. Nobody fights anyone, and they all cooperate for the good of everybody. While in the conglomerates like Iraq and Syria, the other is the enemy. Means the other citizen who belongs to another clan, to another ethnic group like Kurds, Arabs, another religion like Yazidis in Iraq, or another sect, Sunni, Shia, and so forth, and they fight each other constantly. And this is part of the tribalism of the Middle East.
Okay.
Means, what I want is to establish emirates in each and every one of the cities of Judea and Samaria, because the society is very tribal. Let them govern themselves. Why should we why did the left bring these criminals from Tunisia, like Arafat, to govern the people? He was totally illegitimate because he was born in Egypt, Arafat. And everybody looked at him as, they said, mush minna, not from us. Abu Mazen is less, because Abu Mazen was born in the north, in Tzfat. He is not one of us. He's not one of our clan, not one of our tribe, not one of our town. Why do we need him? Only because the Israelis brought him to control us? Totally illegitimate, totally unacceptable, totally rejected by the population.
Also criminals. These people that they brought to run Arab life inside Israel, they're criminals.
In order to become legitimate, they start distributing money to all kinds of friends and allies in order to buy people. So they are criminals. What we should have done is to go to the local clans of each and every one of the towns, have an emirate.
The largest form of government would be the city government then. Is that what it means?
Yeah, the sheikhs, the old people who will constitute a majlis, means like a parliament. The officials will be nominated by them, and they will be the source of legitimacy. The majlis.
But you're imagining then that in each Arab-Palestinian town there would be one family that is the government. Is that how you think?
Either one family, like Arikat in Jericho, or a group of families who have
who are agreed.
Who have a court which sits almost every day to solve problems between the clans.
Okay.
A clannish court. That's what they call mahkama ashairiyya in Arabic. And they know very well how to solve problems. And they have their own laws, and they have their own traditions. And this is what is legitimate in these societies.
Okay, why do you
try to run an Arab society by using Western ideas like communism, socialism, democracy, all these things are rejected. Just like if you want to operate your phone, which uses Android, by the operating system of iPhone. It doesn't work.
Right.
The Western ideas failed in the Middle East totally.
That's an interesting metaphor.
There are voices already in these towns which want this solution.
In other words, people from the Arab-Palestinian population agreeing with this proposal.
Definitely.
I see.
Now the clans which hate the PA, and they hate Hamas as well.
Okay.
They want to take the lead in order to...
And kick them out.
To kick both. The PA and Hamas.
So in other words, you believe that if the Israeli government were to commit itself to the Emirates solution, it would have the support of the clans against these terrorist organizations.
Definitely, and they will join the Abraham Accords.
In other words, the analysis you're recommending is that since they would lose the terrorist government over them, they would be forced to deal with the Israeli state, and therefore having autonomy after Israel wins the war would not endanger the state of Israel.
Yes.
That's your belief. Okay, let's talk about Qatar.
So believe this what is already.
Qatar is the big patron of Hamas in addition to Iran. So it seems to me that it is fair to say that when Hamas attacked Israel on October 7th, this was Qatar attacking Israel on October 7th.
No doubt.
Do you agree?
Of course.
Okay. Qatar attacked Israel from behind an American shield.
No doubt.
Because the United States has its most important military base in North Africa, the Middle East, and Central Asia in Qatar. That's CENTCOM
Udeid.
headquarters. Al Udeid base, exactly. CENTCOM headquarters. So the fact that gigantic U.S. military base is in Qatar means that Qatar feels safe attacking Israel, because for Israel to attack Qatar, they would have to get permission from the United States.
They succeeded to hold the stick in both sides. Means to be friends and enemies of everybody.
That sounds to me like if Qatar is doing anything, it must be American policy. because the U.S. can so easily remove the government of Qatar that they should be able to shape Qatar's foreign policy.
Now, what Qatar? Look at the Clinton Foundation, who sponsors the Clinton Foundation, and you get the answer. Who are the sponsors?
Qatar.
This is how Qatar buys the silence of the world when it comes to all kinds of behavior.
Okay, so I'd like to ask you what your explanation for this is, because the United States government, the U.S. bosses, are not enemies of Iran. One reason for thinking that is that in the middle of the 1980s, we found out that the American president was sending in secret billions of dollars in armament to the Iranian terrorists. It's called the Iran-Contra affair.
And then Obama sent these two airplanes with cash
That's
money.
right. Putting your biggest military base in Qatar, Al Udeid, that's not the same thing as deterrence. That's an alliance. In fact, what that base in Qatar says is that Israel may not attack Qatar, but Qatar may attack Israel.
Of course.
Well, that sounds...
This is the Qatari way
that looks
to buy everybody.
Right, so that looks to me like an anti-Israeli U.S. policy.
The American policy, or foreign policy, doesn't always fits the Israeli interests.
Does it ever?
Oh, of course. Well,
really? So would you consider bringing...
most of the time, most of the cases.
Most of the time. Okay, so I think that the most important policy of the United States towards Israel is, in fact, the Oslo Accords. That's the most important one. Look, that is totally anti-Israeli.
Don't forget that the Oslo Accords were initiated by Israelis.
You yourself agree that the idea of autonomy for the Arab Palestinians and negotiating with PLO Fatah is not the same thing, because you want Emirates-based autonomy without PLO Fatah. You want it with the clans. So the fact that Menachem Begin was speaking about autonomy in 1978 does not mean he had agreed to negotiate with PLO Fatah. Autonomy for the Arab Palestinians is one thing, and negotiating with PLO Fatah is another. And the place where the taboo against negotiating with PLO Fatah was violated, that's Madrid, 1991, and the guy who did it was Benjamin Netanyahu. He was the Undersecretary of Foreign Affairs that traveled with Yitzhak Shamir to Madrid. He was the most senior functionary in the Israeli government dealing with foreign affairs. He was the one responsible for violating the taboo against negotiations with PLO Fatah.
Look, I have a lot of criticism about Netanyahu and his policies through the years. The man was for the unilateral withdrawal from Gaza in 2005.
That's correct.
If I can define Netanyahu's behavior, political behavior vis-a-vis the Arabs, I would define it as a policy of what is possible. He is much more pragmatic than ideologist. If he was, Shamir was the ideologist. For him, he has an idea, he would move anything, not even sentiment from this idea, because he was ideologue. Netanyahu's policies is much more adjustable to the situation.
People say that Israeli prime ministers are forced by American presidents to do X or Y. I have trouble understanding that language, because I think if an Israeli prime minister doesn't want to do something, he can refuse to do it. How is it that American presidents force Israeli prime ministers to do things that are against the interests of Israeli Jews?
Well, unfortunately, Israel depends too much on the United States of America, on all kinds of levels. On the international level, we need them in the United Nations. We need them support vis-a-vis the Europeans, sometimes vis-a-vis the Arab world. We need them in all kinds of circles like human rights, Council of the United Nations, and many other things.
But the United States, as we just said, is the shield behind which Qatar attacked Israel on October 7th.
So the United States juggles between Israel and its enemies sometimes, and it's not so easy.
But if the United States can force an Israeli prime minister to do things that are radically against the security interests of Israeli Jews. Wait. If an American president can do that to an Israeli prime minister, why can't they do that to the Emir of Qatar? Why can't they force the Emir of
This you have to
Qatar?
ask the Americans. the Americans, sometimes really, I cannot decipher the American thinking in too many cases. How come they don't see the problem which Israel sees?
But maybe they do see it. Maybe they're your enemies.